Santa Monica Beach, summer of 1971. The kind of California afternoon that makes you understand why people move here and never leave. Clear sky, warm sand, the Pacific doing its usual indifferent thing, waves coming in and going out regardless of anything happening on the shore. Bruce and Linda had been at the beach since mid-morning. They had a spot near the middle of the public stretch, 2 towels, a bag with water and fruit, the uncomplicated ease of 2 people who have been together long enough that they don't need to fill the silence. Linda was reading. Bruce was watching the water, the way he watched everything, with the quality of attention that most people reserve for things that are actually requiring their attention. Around 1 in the afternoon, Bruce walked up the beach toward the public restrooms and the parking lot. He had a phone call to make, a producer contact who had left a message at their hotel about scheduling. He told Linda he'd be 20 minutes, maybe less. She nodded without looking up from her book. She kept reading for maybe 5 minutes after he left. Then she became aware of someone standing near her, not passing. Standing. She looked up. 3 men, late 20s, all of them large in the way that men are large when they have spent years deliberately making themselves larger, not fat, built. The specific construction of people who treat their bodies as a project and have put significant time into that project. The one in front was the largest, maybe 6'2", 230 pounds of the kind of muscle that announces itself without any assistance from the person carrying it. He had his arms crossed, and he was looking down at her with a smile that had decided what it wanted before it arrived. "You've been reading that same page for 20 minutes, he said. Linda looked at him. "I don't think that's true," she said. "I've been watching," he said. He said it like this was a compliment rather than what it was. "I'd rather you didn't," Linda said, and looked back at her book. One of his friends made a sound that was half laugh and half encouragement, the specific sound of someone providing an audience. The man crouched down to her level, putting himself in her sightline. "I'm just being friendly," he said. "You're alone. I'm not doing anything wrong." "I'm not alone," Linda said, "and I'd like to be left alone. Please." "Your boyfriend went to make a phone call," the man said. "That was like 10 minutes ago." Linda closed her book and looked at him directly. "Please leave." He smiled wider. This was going the way he wanted it to go, or at least the way his friends were watching it go, which for him was the same thing. He reached down and picked up her water bottle from the towel beside her. "Hey," she said. He opened it and poured it across her book, slowly and deliberately, watching her face while he did it. His friends laughed. "Oh, sorry," he said. "Accident." Linda stood up. She was not performing calm. She was actually calm, which is a different thing, and she said, clearly, "That was a deliberate and childish thing to do, and I'd like you to leave now." "Or what?" he said. Behind him, a short distance away, across the sand, Bruce Lee was walking back down the beach. He had seen Linda stand up. He had seen the 3 men. He had read the situation in the specific way he read all situations, completely and from a distance, and he had understood what he was looking at before he was anywhere near it. He walked at the same pace he had been walking. The man with the empty water bottle was still talking. He was saying something about how he was just having a conversation, about how she needed to relax, about how the whole thing was a joke. His friends were contributing to this in the way that friends contribute to things they have decided are funny and safe. Bruce walked up and stopped a few feet away and looked at the scene quietly. Not performing a rival, just arriving. The man noticed him. He turned and looked at Bruce the way he had looked at Linda, with the same preliminary assessment, the same arriving at a conclusion before having information that had defined his entire approach to the last 10 minutes. What he saw was a man shorter than him by several inches and lighter by a significant margin in plain swim shorts and a dark t-shirt and sandals, and his assessment completed itself almost immediately. "Boyfriend's back," he said to his friends, without adjusting his posture. Bruce looked at Linda. "Are you all right?" "Fine," she said. Her voice was steady. Bruce looked at the wet book on the towel. He looked at the empty water bottle in the man's hand. He looked at the man. "That was hers," Bruce said. "It was an accident," the man said. "No, it wasn't," Linda said. The man looked at Bruce with the expression of someone assessing whether this was going to require any recalibration of his approach. The assessment, based on the visual, suggested it didn't. "I think you should just take your girl and go," the man said. He was being reasonable in his understanding of himself. He was giving an out. "I think you should apologize to her," Bruce said. The man looked at him for a moment. Then he smiled, the specific smile of someone who has been given what he considers an absurd request and is deciding how to respond to the absurdity. "That's not going to happen," he said. "Okay," Bruce said. He said it simply, without edge, without building toward anything. Just okay. The word of someone who has received information and incorporated it. The man's friends were watching now, with the interested attention of people who have decided this is entertainment. One of them said something quiet to the other. "You want to do something about it?" the man said to Bruce. He took a step closer. He was using his size the way he always used his size, as a physical argument that didn't require words. Bruce looked at him, without taking the step back that the step forward was designed to produce. He said, "I want you to apologize to her. That's what I want. And if I don't?" Bruce looked at him for a moment with the level, unhurried attention of someone who is being asked a question they have already answered. He said, "Then we'll find out something." The man laughed. He looked at his friends, sharing the joke, and then looked back at Bruce. He reached out and put his hand on Bruce's shoulder, not a grab, a placement, the same territorial gesture that had worked across many years of being this size in proximity to people who were smaller. He had barely registered the contact of his own hand on the shoulder before he was no longer standing where he had been standing. The sequence was brief enough that afterward, none of the three men could reconstruct it with any precision. What they knew was that one of them had put his hand on a smaller man's shoulder and then found himself on the sand, and the trip between those two states had no retrievable middle section in their memory. It was before and after, with no during. He got up. He was not hurt, not seriously, but getting up took a moment longer than it should have, and that moment had a quality to it. He looked at Bruce. Bruce was standing where he had been standing, approximately, give or take a foot, with his hands at his sides. "What was that?" the man said. Not a question exactly. Bruce didn't answer. The man came forward. This was the decision that the adrenaline made for him, the decision that followed from the logic of who he had been for the last decade, and what had always worked, and what he understood about situations like this. He came forward with real intention, his right hand moving in a way that was not quite a punch and not quite a grab, but had the full weight of 230 pounds of trained muscle behind it. He missed. The mechanism of the miss was hard to describe, because it involved Bruce being somewhere other than where the hand expected him, and the somewhere other was not far enough away to look like movement from the outside. It looked, to the two friends watching, like the hand simply failed to find what it was aimed at. And then the man was on the sand again. This time getting up took longer. He sat for a moment and put his hand on his side, where something felt different, and looked at Bruce from the ground with an expression that was working through several things at once. One of his friends took a step forward. Bruce looked at him. Just looked, without any change in posture or expression. The friend stopped. The other friend stood where he had been standing, and did not move. The man on the sand got to his feet. He stood. His breathing was different from how it had been a few minutes ago. Heavier, more deliberate. He was looking at Bruce with the specific look of someone who has been operating with a set of assumptions about how the world works, and has just encountered significant evidence against those assumptions. Bruce said, "Apologize to her." The man stood there. He was calculating something, working through the options his situation now contained versus the options it had contained 5 minutes ago, and the calculation was different from what it would have been before. He looked at Linda. She was standing with the same directness she had maintained throughout, not in any particular defensive posture, not performing anything, just watching. "I'm sorry," the man said. He said it to Linda. He said it quietly, without the performance of graciousness, which actually made it more genuine than if he had tried to dress it up. Linda looked at him for a moment. Then she said, "Thank you." There was a pause in which nobody did anything. Then the man looked at his friends. He picked up the water bottle from the sand where it had ended up. He set it back down on Linda's towel. He walked away up the beach, and his two friends followed him, and the three of them did not look back. The people nearby, the half-dozen individuals within close enough proximity to have watched most of this, were quiet for a moment. Then the ordinary sounds of the beach resumed, the waves and the distant music, and the voices of people who were far enough away to have missed everything. Bruce picked up Linda's book. He looked at the wet pages. He handed it to her. "How's the chapter?" he said. Linda looked at him. "I'll let you know when I finish it," she said. They sat back down on the towels. Bruce opened the bag and handed her a dry towel for the book. She pressed it against the pages. He sat and watched the water. They stayed for another 2 hours. Later, walking back to the car with their things, Linda said, "You could have just walked away from it." "You couldn't," Bruce said. She was quiet for a moment. "I handled it." "You did," he said. "Before I got there and while I was there." They walked in silence for a while. Then Linda said, "What did you do?" "The second time. He went down and I didn't see why." Bruce said, "He committed all his weight forward. When something commits fully like that, you don't have to do much. You just have to be somewhere useful when it arrives." "Is that all?" she said. He considered this. "Mostly," he said. The man's name was Gary, and he drove back to the valley that afternoon with his friends. in a car that was quieter than the drive out had been. One of the friends, the one who had taken the step forward and then stopped when Bruce looked at him, said something about 20 minutes after they left the beach. He said he had read something about Bruce Lee, about what he was, about what the films didn't fully convey, and that he thought maybe they had run into someone specific. Gary said, "I know who he is." His friend said, "You knew?" Gary said he had figured it out when Bruce was already standing there. He said he had recognized the face from something he'd seen, one of the films that had been circulating, and that he had made his calculation anyway, which in retrospect was not his best calculation. The friend was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Why'd you apologize?" Gary said, "Because he asked me to." The friend said, "He could have made you." Gary said, "I know." He thought about this for a while on the drive back. He had been in situations before where he had done something he shouldn't have done and had gotten away with it, and the getting away with it had produced in him the thing that getting away with things produces, which is the sense that it didn't matter, that the world had absorbed it without consequence, and therefore it was absorbed. This was different. This afternoon had not produced the getting away with it feeling, it had produced something else, the specific discomfort of having been shown something clearly and having no available defense against the clarity. The apology he gave had come from that discomfort, not from fear of what would happen if he didn't give it, but from the genuine understanding that it was owed. He trained seriously, and he had for years. He had built his physical capability through genuine sustained work. He understood commitment and discipline in the specific context of his own development. He had never thought about what it was for. Not really. He had thought about what it looked like, and what it won, and what it communicated. He had not thought carefully about what it was actually supposed to serve. That afternoon on the beach had introduced a question he hadn't been asked before, not in words, but in something more direct than words. He went back to training. He added things, not fighting specifically, though he did some of that too, but things adjacent to it, things that required him to think about what physical capacity was actually in service of, beyond the immediate fact of having it. He was not transformed overnight. That's not how it works. But the question stayed with him, uncomfortable and persistent, the way good questions do. Years later, coaching younger athletes at a gym he eventually helped run, he had a principle he stated consistently to people who were building themselves towards something. He said that physical capacity was real and worth developing, and that nobody should let anyone tell them otherwise. And then he said that capacity without direction was just pressure looking for somewhere to go, and that the most important thing you could spend time figuring out was where you actually wanted it to go. When people asked him where he got that, he said he learned it from someone on a beach a long time ago. He didn't elaborate. Some of it was the content of what he had been shown. Some of it was the manner in which he had been shown it, the complete absence of cruelty in what could easily have been cruel, the apology requested and accepted, and then the subject closed. Some of it was Linda's steadiness throughout, the woman who had been disrespected and who had not flinched and who had said thank you when the apology came with the same directness she had brought to everything else. He thought about that thank you occasionally. The way it was given without performance, without magnanimity, just as a simple acknowledgement of something that had been owed and was paid. No lingering over it, no extracting anything from the moment beyond the moment itself. That was its own lesson, separate from the physical one, and in some ways more durable. Bruce and Linda stayed together. They raised 2 children. They built a life organized around the kind of commitment that doesn't photograph well, but accumulates across years into something solid. Linda has written about Bruce with the specific clarity of someone who knew the real person and is not interested in the mythology replacing him. The beach afternoon was not a story they told publicly. It was too small in the accounting of their lives, too specific and too ordinary in the way that most of the true moments in a life are ordinary. Something happened. It was handled. They sat back down on the towels and watched the water. The Pacific continued not caring. The waves came in and went out. The gulls made their circuits. The book dried eventually. Linda finished the chapter.